Woo! Faraway friends, here we are again. We're doing the thing. Thank you for joining us on After Dark. I believe this is the 9th episode. And we have with us our own wonderful First Lady of Darkport, Tatiana. Yay! Woo! So, Tatiana, how are you doing over there? Where are you and how are you doing?
I'm home in Long Island, New York, where I was raised for the holidays, and I'm doing really well, actually. It's
Yeah.
nice to come home and slow down a little bit, and to come home to a new puppy in the family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, things are good.
That's wonderful. Are you getting some good rest over there?
I'm trying. It's going to happen. I'm devoted to that being my end of year.
You're devoted. Tomorrow's winter solstice. It's a big day for some of us.
Huge day.
I have a few intentions that I'm gonna plant at the most contemplative day of the year, and that are just gonna grow and grow and grow throughout the year in momentum. It's a very potent time to set one's intent in motion, I have found.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have some inner work to do as well as we wrap up this year. I would imagine you do also.
Oh, I've devoted myself to a 13-day journal practice to welcome in the new year fresh and just really process the whole past year, which was a big year for me. And have a few days completely without technology. I'm excited about that.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Also, we have producer Justin with us. Hello.
Justin.
Yay.
Hey everybody, good to see you again.
Yeah, we don't get to hang out very much, Justin, you and I on screen, actually.
True. It's very true.
And
you, Tatiana.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was telling Tatiana now that she has the keys to the kingdom, any of these after darks she can just pop in on as she will. We always love having friends. Sometimes when we can get like a baby Toby in, that's really fun too. And then on the back half of this, Justin, once Tatiana bids us adieu or continues to hang out with us, but we're on the back end, I want to talk to you about your first impressions of being a player again for the first time in 2 years, and how Curse of Strahd is hitting you and what you think about it, and playing Durgan Oakenshield and all of that. So I'm sure you'll have some things to say. All right. So Tatiana, we had. I do not always succeed, but I always really do try to follow through with whatever I talk about at the GM's table, or at the GM's position at the table. So one thing that we had done during our second roundtable, which I think was pretty robust and pretty crammed and lively. Yeah, I mean, there was we covered a lot of ground, but we weren't able to get to you playing a certain other character. Zach. Yay.
Hey, Zach.
Hello, Zach. Always good to see you in these parts. From Taka is literally a faraway friend. So I guess I'll start with how is Okatla, who is your, I guess if you want to explain who Okatla is, kind of in the larger narrative of the campaign. But who is Okatla and how would you describe her?
Okatla is a distant relative of Lisa. She is a key figure in the history of the Eurolit society, and I see her as a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, she is a woman who doesn't really have a lot to lose. She's willing to live with her full force, her full will, knowing her power, and taking destiny into her own hands, and her actions back in the day are unfolding in real time through the gaming and will affect how the Eurlet society is to be known. So
Yes.
it's playing a historical figure in that way.
Well, that actually, that's exactly what it is. Because the Age of Tezcatli episodes are happening 400 years in the past. But aside from, there are certain touchstones, historical touchstones, that are written stone, that are going to happen. But how the characters get there, who survives them, what version of those stories gets passed down, I mean, those are all yet to be determined. And just for some of our faraway friends, so this is the character that Tatiana usually plays, who is named Wesa. And do we have a Wesa? Yes, we do. So this would be your main character, and we'll talk a little bit maybe at the end about about Wesa and how you're playing Okatla has informed your play of Wesa, who's younger and in the current era. And then here is the historic Okatla contemplating a certain artifact. Currently in her possession, the Talon of Tezcatli, as it were. And there's more to say about that, but those are just, there we go.
I love that image of her.
So there, Okatla can be with us for a bit. What do you okay? Yeah, let's start there. What does that image mean for you?
Okatla, I see her as such a beautiful woman, actually, which I know there's a joke on our table that everyone's like, oh my god, Okatla, she's killing people, she's terrible, she's bad. But I've really gotten to a place with her that I so deeply respect her and think that she is a beautiful being. So seeing her contemplating this relic, which I know is very sacred to the culture and sacred to herself, regardless of how she wields it or not. Like, I see the reverence and the balancing that she's doing between her own self-interest and her understanding of the culture and what's important. So I love her.
Well, I mean, you definitely play her. I was saying just before stream, I could tell what character you were playing, even if I couldn't hear the dialogue and from a distance. Like, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but like your body language shifts at at the table, your energy shifts at the table, and it still feels consonant, like it still feels part of that lineage, but it is like you said. I mean, actually, you described it, as you so often do, Tatiana, succinctly and so precisely. She is a woman who lives with the full force of her will. And we don't, and yet she retains the quintessential subtlety of the Eurolite culture and the grace of the Eurolite culture, I would say, actually. And that's a rare character. That is a rare character, because she's like all of those things, which is kind of what I was. It was a tall order, but that's kind of what I was hoping you would do with her. Because this is this Age of Tezcatli episodes. This is, even though you and I played through a little bit of her background, like a little bit. This is the first time on screen that we've seen the Eurolite, actually. And that we've seen their culture. So how would you describe that moment, and how would you describe the culture, like the moment that she's living through, and the culture that she's encountering. And I'm going to put up one more piece because the moment is dire.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty dire. So she's living through an absolutely timeline shifting moment for the culture. She's right at the center of it. She's sculpting it in real time through her choices, through what she's disclosing, what she's not disclosing, who she's partnering with, who she's not partnering with. And it's a time where I've had to really sit with this. Like, the image itself points to this. There's a sense of being a kid with your Legos or your Lincoln Logs, and you can kind of build whatever you want. And the culture the city has been destroyed by the Green Doom. Maybe Okatla had something to do with that. But now it's this disarray that she is choosing to put back together in a way that is led, and she's listening, but is also in her interest of what she sees to be right. And it's also, the Eurolit are a group of very structured, regimented, ritualistic people who also are a bit ravenous or a bit feral in their ability to deceive, to kill, to get what they want. So it's a really interesting mixture of order and chaos that she's pretty great at navigating, I'd say, but there's also many other players that are good at navigating it as well. So she's trying to hold all the pieces together, hold her cards close, while also assert herself and be seen powerfully right now.
So that's a beautiful description of it. And by the way, for our faraway friends, if there are any questions that you want to ask Tatiana about Okatla or the Eurolit writ large, please feel free to throw these in. This is has always meant to be an interactive experience, and I deeply I always deeply value y'all's time and care. So please feel free to ask away and contribute. What surprised you? So I think we've established who she is and kind of her historical context. What has surprised you the most, though, as you've developed her?
It's very subtle for me. Playing a character that is so willing to assert herself and kill the person that is love and cause a stir. I think it's easy in your mind to paint that as like a two-dimensional thing. Like, oh, you are just a villain. You're just
a villain, yeah.
Whatever. And embodying the character and having to make decisions as the character, I have found this innocence in her. I have found this yeah, I have found this sweetness. Like, I'm telling you, I'm like a huge fan of Okatla. I actually can understand why she does what she does. And I didn't really have any expectations going into this. I'm just trusting your lead. But it's been really a cool empathy exercise for myself to understand the person that no one can excuse their behavior and go, well, I can kind of sort of understand. I can understand that person. I can see that they think that they're doing something great, and that they have their own values that are being worked through at that time. So,
that's an interesting thing, and I don't want to give away too much because her backstory is still, an evolving thing. But what parts of her do you feel like she has? What parts of her do you feel like she's kept for herself?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, without giving anything away, there is more to the story of why Okatla has done what she's done.
Mm-hmm.
And she could absolutely create sympathy by sharing that, and she doesn't.
That's true.
Which I find to be really interesting. I think also she keeps to herself her own questionings. Like, it's not that everything has just been cut and dry, emotionless. There's absolutely been a process of having to sit with the chess game of it all and what's worth it and what's not worth it. And even though she is willing to, there is of course a space in her that maybe she hasn't really let herself be in for a while that does care about some of these people. So yeah, those are the things I'd say she keeps to herself.
I want to also get to the juxtaposition of deep spirituality and the feralness that you're talking about, because I think that's another fascinating dichotomy of the Earlet.
Absolutely. You're right. She definitely does keep a certain aspect of her wildness contained that is not seen very often.
No, it's not only like in these supreme moments. So I want to get back to that, but let's look at what our faraway friends are cooking up here. So Zach writes, I know that bleed is really difficult to control even when only playing one character. So how do you keep Okatla and Waisa separate, especially with how much they share?
Great question, Zach. I
He
think
always has amazing questions.
it helps that I use different voices for each character. Waisa has a bit more of a lyrical accent, whereas Okatla, I remember making the decision on the fly that first time. I'm like, okay, she's just a bit harsher. She's a bit more direct.
Oh yeah, no, she cuts in. Yeah.
Yeah, and that really helps me. I'm very energetic, vibrational kind of person. So it's like, okay, if I speak this way, everything's gonna come out that way. And I just keep trying to orient back to the values. So Okatla's got full focus vision right now. Whereas Waisa is still exploring a lot of things. She has goals and missions, but she's also in a greater context of relating to her troop, her crew, relating to her inner self and becoming an adult. And she has a lot more like ponderings than Okatla, who's like, hey, I made this decision. And now that all I'm really pondering is like when, where, how, a little bit more direct and jagged. So their speeds and the way that they digest things definitely helps me separate them.
That's good. That's interesting. Can you see the chat, hun?
Yeah, I can.
You want to read the next one from Viridian?
Yeah. What is her biggest motivation as far as you can answer? That's a really good question because I'm discovering it in real time, but I feel her biggest motivation is similar to Waisa, where Waisa really cares about justice and fairness. And in a strange way, Okatla does too. And because while it is about her and her power and her abilities, it is also, I get the sense, we haven't gotten there yet, but she also isn't going to just abandon this culture and make it into some funhouse Okatla town. Like, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is being the conduit, being the channel that will be known, that will be revered, that will be honored for leading the culture into a new era. So because of her ritualistic work, because of how she's been trained, I see her as there's her ego desire, and then there really is this listening, which you could say is destiny, fate, what have you, of I'm bringing in the Age of Tiscali. It's going to be me. I'm going to burn down this stuff that I don't like. And I'm doing this because it's rightful. So.
Wow, Tatiana, that you just gave me chills. I can really, now that you frame it that way and that you explain it, I can really see where she's coming from. Obviously, like I gave you the initial push, like, okay, here's what's in motion, but I mean, you can tell our friends that, like, I've really had very little. There've been certain beats, and then that's it. And really, the rest is how you get there, how you encounter it, if you succeed or fail. All of those things, like that's all on you. That's all up to you.
It's true. And it's fun to answer these questions because I don't really know I think these things all the way, but I do. And it's been really fun to feel her and co-create with you.
Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for throwing yourself into this. I had always planned to do some sort of Age of Tiscali kind of backstory, but I was envisioning it as like a mini campaign, that maybe we did when we wanted a break from the main one, or maybe we did when, like, you and one or two other people could be there, but during a long hiatus or something. But as it happened, it kind of got thrown together out of necessity, but it's really blossomed out of that, like, scramble. I think something truly, truly unique is happening when we have those episodes,
Definitely.
Zach's Zach, do you want to read Zach's next one?
Yeah, I can. Do you think that when the dust settles and Akatla reigns, as she should, do you think she will change when she's able to relax and let the massiveness of her situation and actions sink in? I'm going to say that it really depends on the state of the rest of the Eurolit and the state of their enemies. And I feel there's a really possible timeline where she is just the master of manipulation until she dies. She has to be that. There's always someone trying to creak open the door and take out her crown or what have you. There could be another timeline, though, where she sets herself up so well and gets herself protected so well that maybe she goes a bit deeper into her art, into her weaving, and into her what she loves, which is her ritual practice, and it's not that much about politics. It's not that much about the power, but I feel like she would have to have things very, very, very set up and solid as heck for her to be able to do that, and I just don't know if that's possible.
That's a really interesting take. Zach notes that it's a rare thing when I'm at loss for words, and Justin said anything that makes him contemplative, for sure. Yeah, but seriously, you have had some moments with that character that are flabbergasting. Like, when I'm talking about magic, I mean, like, the whole discussion with Nalishli in the tomb was fire. Like, I was sitting there as the GM, and I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna what's gonna happen here? And it's so nice to see, frankly, two, like, very different but powerful women having a conversation with each other that has nothing to do with the men in their lives or their everyday worries or blah blah blah. I mean, it's like this is an exalted conversation about really about like destiny, if when you boil it down, and how Akatla is willing to like turf out even a freaking avatar of her goddess. Like she's just because she understands. I don't know, maybe this is me projecting, but like she understands that the world of muscle and blood is for those who have muscle and blood. It's for the humans who live here, and the gods are obviously vastly powerful and to be revered, but ultimately this is your world, not theirs. Ultimately.
Right.
Would you agree with that, or do you think she has a different?
I think it's a little bit more simplistic for her in the sense of like, hey, either you're on board here or you're not. Either you're, I'm playing chess with like 5 people, so I don't really have a lot of wiggle room for you to mess around. I can honor you, I can respect you. I doubt you're going to stay here. I doubt you're like there's that transient feel that this is just some kind of divine experience, but it's not the culture, it's not the people. So, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. It's like, are you on my side here, or are you gonna make this easy for me, or are you not?
and it's pretty remarkable that in universe it's only been like 8 days.
That's
all of that crap happened in 8 days, Tatiana. So I just want to show off a little bit more, a little tease here as to what kicked this whole thing off.
And you're right, Zach. I agree with you. She definitely is 100% a priestess first and ruler second. I completely agree.
Yes, the mysterious egg. Here we are. How do you? I guess before I tie it back into Wesa, how does it feel for one of these historical characters that you're embodying to be like so tightly interwoven with the green of the campaign title, gold, green, and red? Like dragons and the poison, the poison energy that she's so well known for. And do you feel like making some news here? Do you want to announce what character class she is, or do you want to keep that?
Really?
Yeah, if you want to, it's up to you. You've held this for a year. You've held this secret for a year and a half now. So, and it's probably going to get revealed on her character sheet when we come back. But we can do it that way, or you could do it now if you wanted to. Your choice.
Well, I guess I can share that she's a sin eater.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And yeah, we may as well drop it here, Zach. Yeah, the character class is called a Sin Eater, and I wanted to make class that, first off, I thought Tatiana would play very well, and she's been, remarkable at it in both incarnations. And second, see, I'm so glad you joined us tonight, V. And second, I wanted a class that did something that 5th edition doesn't really emphasize, but that I was going to emphasize, which is getting into the nooks and crannies of the interpersonal relationships. And in Katla's case, and you've actually kind of intuited the second function and the more mature function, Tatiana, of a Sin Eater, which is to be a really, really damn good politician. So, purely custom, Zach. But I did look. I was inspired by the Rogue, and if you look at their when I put out the rules for it, which is I'm also working on, trying to decide when to do that. Probably drop that in the wiki or something, or maybe that'll be a members only thing. Haven't decided yet. But I tried to base them largely mechanically on the rogue and kind of balance them off of that. So yes, like the Sin Eater obviously can be potent in combat. You have different abilities. Tatiana, you've like exploited the hell out of breaking bread, where you take whereas if you can eat something or drink something that the other person is eating or drinking, it gives you a significant amount of power over them. But really their main their prime function is psychological. Really is as a psychological spy. So or at least interpreter. And it's again, you've intuited like in Wesa and Okatla, you've really played like the two extremes so far of those characters, like of how that class could be played and everything in between. So yeah, no, I love the name to Viridian. That's really nice. So as we go to
love this egg. Never seen it this big.
Yep.
Beautiful.
So in that context, what is it like as you kind of inhabit this character and you're exploring all of these different how do I want to put it, draconic influences? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I love it. I really enjoy it. It's good for me. It feels healthy for me to just explore will and explore just, I think with Wesa, and she's really been curious about this in her journals and such, of I have this power, what do I do with it? How do I know when I'm going too far? When is it rightful to manipulate? When is it not? And these are things that we have to consider overall in our lives because we influence each other all the time. Sometimes more aggressively, sometimes less aggressively, but we have influence on each other. It's a really great inquiry to ponder on. And then in the example of Okatla, it's like, yeah, wow. When you really want something, and in her mind, it's for the betterment of the greater whole, even if there's losses and such. She is imagining a new era that is amazing. So
yes.
When there is a vision that is so clear and so bright, are you willing to do whatever it takes? Can you do whatever it takes? What are the limits? Are there limits? And I come from a place of like, yes, there are limits, of course. However, it's fun to play with that and game with that and feel that fire, feel that confidence of I am completely sure of what I'm doing. And so everything I'm doing, I'm not questioning. That's really cool.
Isn't that the promise of gaming, Tatiana? That you get to inhabit, I know this is the first time you've gamed, which makes it even more gonzo that this campaign is your very first campaign.
Yeah.
But like the promise of gaming is that you can have these experiences and you can have these interactions that you could never have in ordinary life. That you couldn't safely do, or you just couldn't do, period. Because of the circumstances, and here you are. And that kind of brings us to the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I think quite nicely, is, well, I guess it's a two-part question, but still, this one is still so,
Thanks,
this
Zach.
one still so strong. Yeah, thank you, Zach. She had Tatiana has like just been exemplary in so many ways, and one of the ways is her willingness to trust. Yeah, agreed, Viridian. It is a wild place, and she's, because it's not like, yeah, let's just start with within a small, contained, little ambitious campaign, so that you can. It's like, no, we're going to do a sprawling dark fantasy epic. That's what we're going to do, with multiple timelines.
Yeah.
So you are playing Wesa in the main continuity, and of course, this is a moment where Wesa is. Well, actually, do you want to explain this moment too?
Sure. So the crew is on this island that has a lot of baggage, a lot of souls that have not been able to move on and move forward. And they come across this village that there is a woman, Kaoli, who is stewarding all of these children who have been slaughtered at the hands of Borealis and his crew in a just terrible act of war and fear, etc. And she is coming and understanding that these are actually Uralit folk, and has an opportunity to, in the future, release them from this middle space that they're in, and they can finally move on.
And I thought this was I thought that whole interaction was pretty incredible. I know that it touched you as well. How did that in your journal entry, was amazing as usual. How, I guess for the record, for it to be memorialized, why did it touch you? And then kind of tie that all, because we find in this that Kaoli calls Wesa blood of Okatla.
Right.
So she's acknowledging this ghostly priestess who has held space for so long, and who, by the way, worked toward a different outcome than Okatla did, because she was trying to bring about an age of Taluk after, instead of Tezcatli. So it's kind of a more quote unquote neutral god than Tezcatli, the Dread Mother. How did that? How did playing through that and also now playing through the Age of Tezcatli, how did that impact you playing Wesa? So how did it touch you, and then how did all of these kind of the sum total of these different other gaming experiences impact how you're currently playing Wesa?
Yeah, that whole scene was tragic and powerful, and I did mention at the time that Kaoli was, to Wesa, the strongest woman she had ever met.
Yep.
And I see that because this is a woman holding space, a woman who's connected to birth and life and creation and beauty, who is holding space for death and for stunted life, and witnessing that again and again and again. I mean, that's just terribly challenging.
Such a good point. Such a good point that she's a priestess of Taluk. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very challenging, and also
God of life.
very respectful of, like, this is a woman who holds her values. This is a woman who is willing to suffer for a greater good, a greater vision, which is, no, I'm not going to leave them here. They need someone to watch after them. And for Wesa, the whole time on the island, but definitely this moment here, she's getting these harsher reality checks of what it means to be in this world. This is a girl who grew up in royalty, pretty much. Then she comes to Germentum, and there's challenge, definitely, but there's a sweetness as well. There's familiarity. She's living in a bakery. She's young, ultimately.
Yeah.
And now the the reality of what can happen in this world is beginning to compound. It's beginning to touch her own edges of her own system, what she can hold, what she can't hold, how to hold it. I think she's learning and listening quite a lot, and it's been a traumatizing time for Wesa. Like, she's not that okay, and that's all right. But definitely a different person now after making contact with the depths of pain.
The depths, yeah. You know, I hadn't fully appreciated how much Wesa had appreciated the fact, you know, because there are all these details that I put in, and frankly, I usually just kind of put them in for my own amusement or my own satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she really keyed into that Coeli was not a priestess of Tezcatli. This was not her quote unquote natural state.
Right.
You know, but it was, as you say, it was life and the arts and beauty and rain and all of these things. And yet she had willingly stepped into that. That statement makes so much sense to me, why she would see her as the strongest woman she'd known up to that point.
Yeah.
Wow. And when you're playing Wesa now, does she feel more like Okatla to you? How does she feel, or does she feel like, because there definitely has been a change, how does she feel like to you now?
I definitely feel that there is more of that timeline in her, activated, awakening. How it's going to sort itself out is yet to be known. I like to see that Wace is going through puberty. Like,
yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
I'm a pretty harsh one at that. Like, my boyfriend's dead, and, you know, I'm just being bombarded with a lot of painful stuff. My dear friend is dead. But there's an awakening, there's an opening where she's understanding her lineage, she's understanding her power, and you have to understand your power. And you'll see that in kids, you see that in teenagers. They're constantly testing what they can get away with, where the lines are. And I feel that Wesa is going through that. And it doesn't mean that she's going to take a turn to the darkness. She could. I'm open to that. But it's more so that she has to grapple with it like a dragon, like a snake. She has to wrestle with it a bit and see what is meant for her, because it's also coming up for a reason. They're going back to Juramentum. There's all kinds of political stuff going on there that's going to require her to be stronger once again. And when you have the gift of will, manipulation, and sureness, sensuality, all these things, you got to learn how to wield that in these kinds of times. Absolutely. So we'll see.
Zach, it's
a lot.
Wace is dealing with a lot right now. I mean, they all are, but she's really dealing with a lot. And because by design the character is more nuanced and complicated in her inner life than, say, Titus or even Nalishli, or in some ways even Marcus. Marcus went through a crisis of faith, which was huge. That was huge, and I don't want to downplay that. But he was always so rooted in his family that part of his identity was never challenged. Whereas Wace is young, very young, and she doesn't really have the roots that these other characters have, or at least in a way even Nalishli, because Nalishli knows that she was from Tezcatli and she's going back to Tezcatli, so that's kind of like the ultimate route. Wesa really doesn't have any obvious destiny in front of her, I don't think. You know.
No, her obvious destiny for herself is to realize her gifts. That's it.
That's it. Yeah, like, I mean, Titus is going to become, the obvious destiny as Lord of Juramentum, and now he's the Bellator Sanctus. He's the holy warrior of the goddess of justice on earth. I mean, that's you know, that's a pretty intense path. You know, initially, like I said, going and coming to the Dread Mother, et cetera, et cetera. Wace's history, much like her mentor Publia, the only other Sin Eater, the only Sin Eater of her generation, is really wide open. I mean, it's meant for her. It's like it's hers to write, sort of thing. And then
it's freeing and beautiful on one level, on another level, it's like, good luck to this sweet girl.
Look at her all grown up, Tatiana.
I know.
I should have. You know what? I messed up. I should have asked Justin to load the original one. We'll have to. Well, sometime when you come back and visit us, we'll have to do a down the road, once we're well into this third story arc. We'll have to do kind of a revisiting Waisa, and just do like a Waisa intensive.
Yeah.
And you can see, but look at how, I mean, that's just like so different. It's so nice compared to the Baker girl,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Zach notes that with no clear goal or structure, that the chaos is is just that much more intense.
Yeah, and I mean, to relate to my own life, like that was my teenagehood, so I get it. I'm like, yeah, girl, I was there. I did that. It's hard.
How is I guess my last question for you is, how is interacting with Toby's new character, Grip?
Yeah,
the little dude with an attitude, your little emo dragon boy.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit. I think he asked this question on our roundtable that Toby did. And there's an appreciation for Grip because it's a good mirror. It's like, okay, right, like I'm not the only one who feels displaced, unsure, pretty angsty, pretty frustrated. It's a nice mirror, and she's comforted by it. At the same time, she will not let herself go to the level he is. So there's a little bit of an annoyance, like, hey, like, get in line.
Get it together, yeah.
Like, come on. But there's a tenderness to that too. She's like, maybe in another life I would be just as tender and raw as you. I'm not allowed to do that. I was not bred to be that way.
It's so funny. I sometimes catch myself wondering how a teenage Okatla would have interacted with Grip.
She would probably ignore him or threaten him. Yeah, she definitely has way less tolerance for that kind of stuff. But, there's always that little but, because when you're bred to be strategic all the time, you have to really consider when to show your fangs and when not to.
It's true.
And I'd say that for these very strategic chess-playing women, they're going to often hide that fang until it's the final moment that it's needed. Otherwise, it's like, why create an enemy? So,
as you brilliantly showed, dealing with a certain Orin the Undying, who was trying to force Pressgang Okatla into a lopsided marriage. That didn't end so well. Yeah, didn't end so well for him. Chosen necromancer or not. Excuse me. Well, actually, I lied. I think here's my final question. As you come back to Juramentum, what role do you see Waisa playing in this third story arc? Like, I would say in the first story arc, the story arc was the gathering, and it was really just about her kind of learning her world, learning how to navigate it, and you as the player learning about role playing, etc., etc. The second story arc, Becoming, was just that, and now she's she's kind of who she is supposed to be, or at least one version of a very young version, but still who she's supposed to be. What do you think because Titus has changed, everybody's changed. Marcus has changed. You don't have an older character in the group now, really. I mean, Marcus is the oldest one, but there's no like elder the way that Merritt could be sometimes,
Right.
because he fell in battle. What role do you predict her playing in this as we get deep into the campaign?
She needs to assess first and foremost what's going on. But ultimately, I see two possible pathways. There's one pathway where she becomes like the seneschal. She becomes the keeper of secrets, the more strong-handed advisor, the more like securing and watchful eyes of Germantum.
Not just Titus, but of Germantum writ large. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Like really keeping her eyes out, really getting all the information she needs to get, willing to go on missions to secure things. Like, yeah, a spy of some kind. I could also see Wesa collapsing a little bit, actually. And needing to be a bit spontaneous, a bit. She might. I don't think this is what would happen, but there is a part of her that would love to just run away and find her brother and go to Crystal Remembrance and kind of forget all of this. Because at this point, there's so much pain for her. The sense of belonging is there, but it's also not. Because
interesting.
She is discovering she doesn't totally know who she is. She's discovering that there's way more to her than she knows. She doesn't. The bakery is a safe place, but it's also different without Publia. There's a sense of, like we already mentioned, what are her goals? And at the end of the day, she will lose her mind if she doesn't find her brother, her twin brother. And she wants to know who she is.
Wow. Oh, Zach. Zach got another one in, so we'll let Zach have the last word. That's beautiful. Thank you for that answer, by the way, Tatiana.
Yeah. Do you see Wesa becoming more autonomous and robotic, just taking her advisor duties and making them her everything in order to avoid having to feel for herself? Yeah, that's what those are the two pathways. It's like she devotes herself fully and deeply to the work, to the duty, to the way. Maybe she spars violently at night with her friend Alishli, but like, you know, she's really buttoning down. Or there's a path where she's like, I actually can't do that. I actually need to melt down a little bit. I need to be a child for one more time. And
wow,
I'm not sure what she'll do.
Wow. I can't think of a better way. I can't think of a better place to end it. That's pretty amazing. You having fun with this character, baby?
I am. And
good. I know it's a heavy campaign, but I'm glad you're having fun.
It is, and at the same time, it always correlates to my life. It always helps me go a bit deeper. It helps me go into feeling that I just wouldn't have otherwise. I used to be in plays. Even I went to Cabaret last night on Broadway, and yeah, these spaces really help you feel things and explore themes that you're not going to in our regular day-to-day life right now. So I'm super grateful for that.
That's been, well, I'm grateful each and every time you're at that table, truly, like sincerely.
Thank you.
Well, friends, we are now going to shift gears, and I'm going to grill player Justin as opposed to producer Justin. Tatiana, you are more than welcome to hang out with us. If you have other things to do and dogs to take care of course, we will understand that as well. But thank you. But regardless, thank you so much baby, for your time.
Yeah, thank you for your great questions, and for our people in the chat. Thank you as well. Awesome.
Yes.
Jam and talk about things. I get to discover how I feel through conversations like this, so it's really fun for me.
It's pretty it's pretty cool. We're gonna I look forward, maybe sometime I can grill you and Justin as players together once the Curse of Strahd campaign is deeper into it. Then we could kind of compare some notes, about how Justin's experience has been, and how playing that character has impacted him, versus elsewise.
That's great. I am going to go because it's later over here, but I'll take a look. I'm going to see how this conversation goes, Justin. And,
okay.
All right then.
Okay. You're welcome, Zach. And yes. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for being with us, bud. All right, honey. Love you. Take care. Right. We'll see you when you get back. Woo! Good stuff there. Really,
indeed.
That was good stuff. Oh, and then obviously, y'all, if you have any follow-up questions once we post this to YouTube, just go ahead and comment, and we'll do a thing. Yes, it's the Justinator.
Exactly. Yes.
It's the Justinator who doesn't get nearly enough time in front of the camera, and yeah. And I think I'll start there, Justin, with you. So, you gamed, we've gamed together for a very long time.
Yeah.
And had a big break in there, but we're certainly going full tilt. And in fact, ironically enough, just before Darkport, I was really bearing down on that home game that was getting that we revived after great 2020, everybody's favorite year, and I was really pulling it in. Your character had hit your home character had hit some true miles,
right? Yep.
After 7 years of this character inhabiting some headspace, you had hit some milestones with them. I mean, some shit was clicking finally. And very much in character, and I was thrilled to see what the party was going to look like. And I felt like those last 2 or 3 sessions were just bangers that we had. I mean, the people had finally become, and your character Maddie had decided, okay, chains are off, I'm done, and then you had to go on this 2-year forced, I don't even want to call it a hiatus, because you were busy as hell, creating the guts of Darkport, the technical guts of Darkport, creating and maintaining those and expanding them. So what has it been like to be gone from gaming so long and now back to being an actual player in Curse of Strahd? Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, obviously I've missed it a great deal.
Absolutely.
It is. Yeah, I mean, this is, gaming was kind of the thing I did when, it was sort of my way to unwind and whatnot. And there's a social aspect to it, but, I think storytelling was always what really drew me in. It's the reason that, I would really enjoy a good role-play game, but I generally speaking, don't tend to do a lot of board games for that reason.
Same.
But yeah, I really wanted to be able to make this thing a reality and kind of see where we could go with it. I mean, it had been a long time since I'd actually gotten into doing any kind of creative endeavor or whatever that kind of really felt like our own. And you and I had never been in business or anything like
Nope,
that before. Like we'd never actually set out to do any kind
that
of
was a
venture before.
whole that was a whole process. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. I'd known Corey, but like Corey, at the time, in many ways was like
He was a gaming buddy.
Like
Yeah.
we never really,
Yeah.
we never spent a lot of time outside of the game, like hanging out. Yeah, like just it was a bit of a leap of faith, but at least you sort of knew who you were getting involved with doing it. I think kind of the original question is how's it felt. It felt incredibly good to get back at a table, and in many ways, like we think about things we never did before. Like, it's interesting because you start thinking of a character you want to play, but then it's like, okay, is this a character I'd actually want to watch? So
It's different.
That's a little bit different thing. It's not completely different. It's not totally alien. I mean, I still want to play the character that I want to play. I still want to imbue them with some of the things I'd want to do as a player. But I do think about that extra sort of element about is this going to be interesting to see? Is this going to be interesting to watch? I'm trying to get there. Right, it's still pretty new for me.
I want to note, I do have a follow-up question to that, but I want to note, and I don't think this is too personal for me to say. We're live, so you're stuck with my judgment. God help you. But at one point, you had expressed how lonely it was. Hey Ellie.
Hello.
You had expressed how lonely it was to be producing, and for a good chunk of it, Justin, a good chunk of the first year, you were alone. Like, you were literally alone, because you were a one man. You were doing the sound, and you were doing the visuals, and you were doing the cinematography, and you were kicking the music. I mean, it was that, I said before, I mean, you had to be like a freaking kraken back there with multiple tentacles going, and you did manage it, but it was like totally consuming. There's no way that you could watch that, that you could be doing all of that and just be like kicking back and watching the show and enjoying it, even as a viewer, really. So I guess I want to thank you, publicly again, that, just the fact that you sacrificed in that way. You sacrificed the most out of any of us, because you were the person who had to do all of the technical things, and also you were not playing.
Right. For any future producers out there, I guess, for me, if the creative itch is something you need, for me, it felt like that was why it was always so important to find new ways to inject the music, or ways to kind of bring mood in, right? Like my job or my worth in sort of the scene was maybe playing a particular character's music right at the right moment, or switching kind of the mood that might happen with the music. Or we haven't really done anything with the lights, but that'd be kind of the thing to do. Visual shots, different layouts, that kind of thing was something that was sort of I was keen to do. As we've learned, seeing the people actually on the screen really matters a lot, and more than anything else, that's what people really kind of get drawn into if they're actually watching it, is actually seeing the people play. So it became very important for me to be able to say, this scene is between these two players, or the two players and the GM or what have you. Let me try to focus just on them and see if that's something that I can bring them into focus. And so my sort of way of injecting myself into the scene, I guess, is maybe a strange way to think of it, is to think of how can I make this more emotionally impactful, or more impactful just in general, by changing up the cameras or the sound or lighting or whatever, right? Maybe sometimes it's just bringing in an image that we had for the thumbnail.
For sure.
Or whatever.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it when those are in there. And on the, without obviously, being negative on anybody who's helped us with this, because we've needed every drop of it. On the sessions where you haven't been running it, I've just seen the impact of that style, and like how different it is, watching things and thank you, Viridian, by the way, for acknowledging that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Viridian.
It's a good, like, it's a really, it was a necessary thing. And I've said this before, that there's nobody else that could have done this. And even if they could have, I would have wanted them to, because it's a really necessary, you know how I feel about this being, if I, at the risk of sounding pretentious, like, this is an art form to me. I mean, I feel like really passionately about storytelling and about doing the best damn job that I can. And it's when I miss a beat, when I mess up, like, it's just like, oh, it's so hard, but it also, that same drive, like, propels you. And so it was necessary that someone who I have a deep love and appreciation of, namely yourself, be the person who's making those decisions, because, like, truly, whoever your producer is co-creating the story with you. Because I can GM my ass off, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't get translated through the screen.
To that note, I mean, I do try to understand your vision, and to kind of, you want to be telling the same story as the person doing the GMing. And that matters a lot, right? Like, you don't want to be bringing in slide whistles and goofy noises and things like that when, bad things happen to people. Like, that would be absurd. And, I think as a, you and I have played together long enough that, I definitely, like, I can definitely tell the difference between, like, your style or your GMing styles, between even, like, different genres or different games. And interesting, you and I have talked a lot more about sort of like where the game system and the game in particular has, like, a particular intent behind it, or maybe even sort of like a some of its theme, but a lot of it's just like, like in the past where you've mentioned that with not Curse of Strahd, but with the Call of Cthulhu, right? You're very pro PC, right?
I am.
And so basically, you're very much sort of on their side, because honestly, it's they don't do well
the odds are,
if they don't have at least one kind of vendor. So
you don't need to do anything as the GM in Call of Cthulhu to make it deadly. Nothing.
Right. Exactly. Right. And then you've got sort of on the other end of that spectrum too. So, like, and it changes based on how senior the players are, that kind of stuff. And so, all that being said, that's led to kind of a lifetime of learning kind of what story you're trying to tell. And this, our main game, or our Gold, Green, Red campaign, is a war story. And I know that is deeply personal to you. Something, I guess you're going to rely on my judgment here too, on live streaming. But when you went away to Iraq, I mean, I didn't know if you're going to come home. And
nobody did.
That's honestly just, I can't imagine something that's that meaningful, that deep, that you wouldn't want that to be meaningful and impactful. And I want to honor that myself by being able to help bring that story to life in a way that translates to what that means. Like, so yeah, I absolutely agree. It is a cooperative sort of co-telling of the story. And like I kind of said right up front, I mean, I want to honor that story that you're trying to tell, because for all the obvious reasons. I mean, it's not always, people don't always come home. So we have to deal with YouTube algorithms and censorships and things like that. But at the heart of this story is that you know, we want to see what this actually does to people, right? We want to see the impacts of this
Right.
stuff. And so you know, I don't know if people are thinking about this, but you know, again, kind of my experience with you, I think there's going to be a hell of a fallout by Merrick not returning, and
Hmm.
there's going to be a hell of a fallout from, you know, the time that they were gone.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
it's gonna I you know, that to me is what this particular story is about, which is quite different than Curse of Strahd.
Yeah. So Justin, thank you. I don't want to elide over that. Thank you for all of that, for your care, for your just, I mean, just ironclad work ethic and devotion, and like literally, this wouldn't have happened without you. Like
Thank you.
you're well, like, yes, you know, in a very in a very real sense. Um, and looking at now as a player, how, I guess, I, the follow on that I wanted uh, to ask you about was, the first one was how. So it's very different for me to stream as a GM than
Hmm.
a home game. For, you know, and I've enumerated that before. How does it feel now as a player,
Being on stream
being on
specifically
screen, and then like
versus
the
like,
adaptations that you have to make? Because
mm,
I mean, I guess technically I have been a player on stream because I was over with Alex, but that was like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because like I love Alex and Morgan and all of that Chaos crew. Or like the setting is very intimate, like the room is small and everybody's like very close to each other, and it feels still very much, you know, minus the I'll just say infrastructure. I'm not going to spill tea on our sister stream here, minus the infrastructure in the room. But come on to AfterDarke sometime, Alex. Um, it hasn't lost the intimacy, whereas and I have nobody to blame but myself, if blame is a word. Like, we really went with a grand style. You know, anybody who's been in the
mhm,
studio, hopefully, I don't know how this will work, but someday we can have more faraway friends visit us, or, you know, whatever. But like, it's
that'd be cool.
it was difficult. It was hard. So
Yeah.
yes, Ellie, agree 100%. And I had to adapt a lot. How has it felt? How has it been for you to adapt as a player while we're streaming, and to kind of understand that you're playing the game, but there's also a performing art piece to it as well?
How does it just feel to be on stream? Um, so I don't, you know, it's funny. In some ways, it feels pretty
Okay.
natural to be at that table. Like, um, we have made a lot of concerted efforts to make it something where people can basically just sit down and more or
Hmm.
less
We
play.
have.
Um, I do, I don't know. I think I know a lot about like how the stuff behind the scenes kind of work, and so I tend to think a lot more about like, you know, am I on mic the way I'm supposed to be? Am I, uh, you know, I I'd like to get better at like maybe, you know, I'm maybe a little bit better about like holding myself still than I would be otherwise if I hadn't been thinking about it. I used to have this thing where I would just constantly play with the dice and things like that. Like that just cannot, you know, be something that I do on stream. It would just be constantly distracting. And so, you know, those little nervous habits
Mm,
you do, you sort of have to like be a lot more
mm,
aware of what you're doing. I still think sometimes I almost look a little bit like a goofball, like I'm not like paying attention to
to your
you know what
face.
I'm doing with my face,
Fix
or
your
just,
face,
you
Justin.
know, like
Fix
when
your
I'm
face.
editing, I'm like, oh man, you know, it's hard to like see yourself like uh, you know, making a goofy face that you didn't even realize you'd made until you see yourself doing it on screen, and you're like, well, guess that's got to stay in, yay, and then you put it in. But yeah, overall, it hasn't been bad.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time, like I said, on the technical stuff, but really, um, on a more metaphysical level, right? It's like there's such a good energy in that room. I mean, we try to take painstaking efforts to make sure that people are comfortable in that room. We want to make sure that people just feel like they're there to have a good time. And um, for the most part, right, we've tried to get the stuff out of the way. I actually was speaking to Alex today about
Yeah, you had
some
mentioned that
stuff,
just before we
and
started streaming. That's so
you know,
cool.
yeah, yeah, we did. Like we don't for the most part don't think about people having to be on a microphone. I mean, it costs more money to do it that way, obviously, but I feel like that makes it a little easier to transition, especially if you've never really played the game. I mean, that would be tough to me, is if like I had never actually played a game before and I was on stream for the first time. I mean, you get people like Mackenzie or even Allie or ironic, both of those two are pretty well versed in multimedia, sort of putting themselves
That's
out
true.
there and being seen and what have you. But
Oh,
Tatiana, right, like she she just sort of just owned it. So um I I don't know, it feels pretty good to be in that room and to play and to just enjoy it. Honestly, I just try not to think too much about being on a camera itself and just make it feel natural and try to be fun. And my part is to think not about how to make the scene better by bringing in music or whatever, but now it's like, how do I interact how do I act as a player that seems like it's going to be more
right,
fun?
right.
Um, so
Maybe you're more
yeah,
natural. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you're more natural at it than I am, Justin. Um, I, it was, I don't know. It took me an embarrassingly long time before I felt comfortable up there. And even now, there's still moments where I'm like, God, don't snort like a pug into the microphone. Like just not.
I well, I've been, I don't know, I've done some theater and things like that in the past, so you get, it's really weird. I have this strange sort of like split. Like, I'm a very private person,
Yeah,
and so like I will have the hardest time, wanting to answer questions around like, personal things on a forum. But if I'm up on a stage and people really start asking questions of me or whatever, I'm usually not. It's usually not that big a deal. Um, I moved a lot. I had to get really used to like making new friends often, and I guess you just sort of get used to the idea of putting yourself out there a lot. Um, that's not always translated that way, but yeah, I don't know. Stage fright, I guess, was not a huge thing
thank
for
you, Ellie.
me.
Um, well, no,
And yeah,
no,
I
that's
think
good.
I agree with Ellie. Like, you're, I actually think that right off the bat you were knocking it out of the park. I don't think you give yourself enough credit for being able to like take that stuff in and being able to like adapt and you know get better and better. I
Thank you,
mean,
Justin.
I think you have gotten better and better. I think you've gotten more natural at it. And I can see like in the beginning when things were a little bit rougher, but it wasn't like it was bad by any means. It was, certainly a very, very strong outing.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
yeah, give yourself some credit too.
Yeah. Whew. You want to read some of the comments here? We have Viridian at the
Absolutely.
top. We all
Yeah, I've seen the studio. It's gorgeous. I was shocked to see how detailed everything is. Um, yeah, we. I'm not quite sure what you mean by detailed there, Viridian, but
a lot of
we put a lot of time and effort in. Like, we did put a lot of time and effort into the details and the touches. You know, Corey, facilitated having a table built that was just really gorgeous, and the players got to sit at this table. The backdrops really kind of helped sort of immerse the feeling of it all. Um, and from my end, the technical stuff, right, was I spent a great deal of time trying to make sure that everything was as much out of the way as possible. I mean, we built the design of the table as kind of like this, kind of this letter A shaped thing, and it meant that the cameras could basically see the players without being on screen. And the mics were intended to be up and out of the way. We didn't go with the lav mics because we wanted to deal with the technical issues that sometimes come with those. The microphones on the table we didn't want to necessarily do. We wanted to be able to like get the environment right. Lighting was another thing. I mean, we had to like make sure we had the right kind of lighting that was diffuse enough that you didn't see a lot of harsh shadows on people's faces. We tried to bring a lot of light into the room. And I think one of the things that still seems incredibly unique about our set is that it's full of color. It's very common to find a lot of like very dark kind of settings, almost these like medieval tavern sort of looks. But like ours really seems to jump out in that it has like, nice bold colors kind of going on around it and behind layers.
I want to catch up on the questions, and then I have a comment on the colors. So
let's see, Viridian says we all look like a bit of a goofball sometimes.
Yeah.
It's all right, thanks. Let's see, Zach, how hard is it to release control of the behind the scenes stuff and trust that everyone else can handle it? And does it change the way you play knowing that you're not the one in control? It is incredibly hard to let go of those things. I had a boss that basically said that when someone else takes over, like when you leave a job and someone else takes over, like a network in this case is what he was referring to, all you can ever think is, what is that jerk doing with my network? And so it's not quite that bad. Sydney and I actually have a pretty good conversation and stay in touch. And I mean, it is a little bit difficult because you just sort of have to surrender the fact that other people are making shots, but she's been doing a great job. I mean, you can see the like scene stuff being done. The music cues seem like they're spot on. When tense moments show up, there music starts playing. So no, I've been very happy with that. Like some of the editing and things like that are going to sort of be shared a little more as things go on. So it can be hard, but it's at least the right people get involved. It makes it a lot easier. Let's see. Do you have any advice for first-time players?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. Are we? I don't see if we're specifically meaning on stream. First-time players. Boy, first time, like, don't worry about the rules. I think sometimes the biggest sort of common concern that I see is with new players coming in is that they worry about looking like they don't know what they're doing. And honestly, like, more often than not, at least we run a game where we're not really super detailed around like the the combat minutia, or like we're not necessarily super concerned about the super efficiency of making sure that the rogue is always in some sort of a flank position or whatever. I mean, like, we get there, but story, especially on stream where people are watching, story should always trump the mechanics.
100%.
And I mean, that's true in a home game, but just basically be who you think this character would be, and just try to embody them. I know that's kind of a broad answer, but
I would say Viridian, the easiest, maybe best answer I can give to first-time players in general, and maybe even more so on stream because there are more variables, but in general, is play yourself. Like, as your very first character, basically just do a self-insert into that world. because you know what that person's reactions are going to be. You know how they're going to think. You know what their value set is. You have a good sense of what made them, all of that stuff. And usually by the time a player gets past their first character, they've got their legs under them, and then they can do something different. That's maybe my best advice on that. Being a first time player is hard, and it's like finding the right group. I guess the other thing I'd say is like find the group that fits you. Because there really is a table for everybody. Like there's a table for beer and pretzels, there's a table for super emotional, there's a table for super tactical where you're playing SEAL Team 6 and everybody is optimal every round, and like it's all about like what kind of play experience you want to get. Let's see. Thank you so much, Ellie. I'm glad you enjoyed when you were at the studio, dear.
Yeah, she mentions the
smell. I know. I saw that.
It's like one thing you can't translate on screen. Man, those candles, some of them are just, they are like the one that they use in the main game is basically, it makes it smell like a bakery shop, and it is. Man, people are just, I can't imagine. That's got to make people feel hungry by the time they're done with the game.
Yep. That's probably why I'm so mean. And Zach, thank you for your kind words. I believe you've been with us from the very beginning, yes, or thereabouts. I mean, I know you've seen it all, but so you really have the full, snorting context of it. I mean, there were some, and there were also some episode 0. I thought so, and there were some sessions in there that were really hard, and I'm not going to say that emotionally it's always easy. Like that's not true, but there were some early episodes, man, where I was like in deep process in real life about my war trauma and my war, like all of that, and I guess I this is the first time I've been willing to completely out myself, but when we were doing Back in Time, she went back in time, and Katrin, and she got to see kind of interact with Crystal Remembrance, man, because it's always the survivors, and I left a comment on that one, called it an after action report. The survivors, they always get me. It's a whole thing. It's a different conversation, but the survivors and stuff like that, like when they get to see themselves like fully healed and triumphant and thriving and all that, like, ooh, because like gives you hope for the future in real life. At least gives me hope for the future in real life, for myself, for others, for the country, all of that. Well, Justin, we've gone quite deep into this, but I do want to ask you what your first so thank you, Zach, what your first impressions are of Curse of Strahd.
I'm loving playing Strahd. Yeah, I do. I'm enjoying like the process of like trying to make my my accent a little bit better. I've come to the conclusion that I don't want to go too far on it because it becomes very difficult to understand. I actually finished. I went looking for like shows and things like that. It's like I wanted to start to listen to like the whole Scottish accent to try to make it better, and I came across a series called Still Game, and of course like started watching the series and finished it, and of course I still had to actually have the text on because it can just be very, when they really start rolling and they start using a lot of different colloquialisms and slang and things like that. It's like okay, you just don't get it all.
Let's see. I didn't know that you had the candles, Zach. That's so sweet. That makes me a little verklempt.
But yeah, I feel like No, I'm having a great time with it. I love hearing everybody talk. Specifically on our Strahd game, like more often than not, you have a very distinctive character voice that's being
Yeah.
used, and like when Melissa is speaking as Gira, it's very obvious that she is in character and that she is speaking as that character. And I'm actually mildly jealous that she's getting, I love doing the Scottish accent too, but it's um, sort of that Eastern European Russian kind of thing is, yet another one of my favorites. So but it's great. I like the playoff that we have with each other. The NPC has like thwarted our main NPC of Morgathi has like uh, thwarted expectations and gotten the first character art somehow. Fan art. It's not right. It's not. I just. But it's been so much fun. I look forward to being able to play those on Sundays and kind of getting those queued up. And I have almost as much fun rewatching them as I do, kind of getting to play them. So I hope everyone else is enjoying watching them as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to as that. Woof, man, there's a reason. Some people are down on rules as written Strahd, and I'm sure there are things that I'm tweaking and there are things that I'm deciding, but honestly, I think it's some damn good material, man. There is a reason why that adventure is. I even go so far as to say venerated. I mean, it's hands down, it's the best written adventure of 5th edition and arguably of any edition up to now.
So we the funny thing is that the vast majority of my time spent playing D&D specifically was actually in 2nd edition, and the GMs at the time almost exclusively pulled things out of Ravenloft. And so like we were always fighting against undead and things of that nature, and it was they make a really good villain, right? There's not a lot of moral complexity to the fact of like who's kind of who's there, and that's, I don't know, that's kind of that nice sort of fantasy setting where you've got like clear delineated good and evil, and it's I don't know, that's kind of a nice refreshing black and white world in some ways. The other morality generally comes with like the people who are doing bad things to survive or whatever it is that they do, but by and large it makes for a very sort of self-reflective environment to grow those kinds of stories.
Dragna Carta's thing of Redditor fame, even though he's like, don't call him, the worst thing you can say to a Redditor is call him a Redditor.
Thank you, the accent, I'm sure for whichever accent you mean,
but he talks about Barovia as a crucible, the land that Curse of Strahd is set in as a crucible, and I think there's some truth to that. I think it one of the reasons why I'm like over here literally rubbing my hands is I want to see what happens when I throw these characters into some true quandaries, into some true moral quandaries, which is really is the true horror of any horror game, is the dissolution of who you want to be and who you think you are. In Cthulhu, that was always in any sort of long-running Cthulhu campaign, which is not an oxymoron, it can be done. Watching the character slowly break down, not just mentally break down, but like morally break down, is always really powerful. Zach, I just want to say thank you very much for your graciousness and holding space for healing. Really appreciate that. And Justin, do you want to get his next one there?
Yeah. So speaking of Strahd, I just got to say the first journal was awesome. Thank you very much. I can't wait to see how you embody this character and help us get to know him and you. Thank you, Zach. I wasn't kidding about the fact that I had like wasn't prepared for the journal entry moment there. That was I'd totally forgotten we were doing that, and then it's like, oh, like literally the moment you said, "Hey, and I think someone has a journal entry."
I did.
You know?
Someone does? Really?
Oh,
Me? Oh, me?
oh, crap. Yeah. But no, it's good. Just sort of on a related note, we do have some bios that we're making with these characters.
Oh, they're
speaking in
so
character
good.
and kind of doing a little bit of backstory to sort of where they
Oh,
come from.
Justin, I can't wait.
that should be coming out.
We have so much production stuff to do with the remainder of the hiatus, but I can't wait to get those bios out, guys. They are good. Those
Yeah.
bios are fun.
Yeah, I like them. So there'll be
Yeah.
more of that.
Like they're in character
and,
bios where they
yeah.
read them in character as the characters, because I thought that would be the best. I really like that idea. So anyway.
Yeah, I do too. I'm really glad that we did that. So yeah, as far as getting to know him, yeah, it's really interesting, especially the way we're sort of handling alignment and the way that people sort of work. And I think we've already had, I don't know that we haven't necessarily aired a ton of it yet, but like I think we've already started to have like a good sort of back and forth between the characters around, you know, like they're kind of getting to know each other, and they're trying, you know, they're sort of establishing sort of their positions in the party around, like, you know, morality a little bit, and sort of like you know, how they sort of fit in as a group. So I am too, Zach. I think it's going to be good, and I'm actually glad that the characters themselves and the players themselves are not taking this as a exercise in efficiency. Like, I don't think it would be a lot of fun to watch every character make every tactical move exactly correct. I think it's way more interesting to see them sort of like
yeah,
you know, work into these things organically. So yeah, me too, Zach. I'm looking forward.
It's
to
more interesting. It's more interesting, and it's more human too.
Viridian says, as someone who consumes an unreasonable amount of British and Scottish media, I will say you were doing a lot better with the accent than I think you give yourself credit for. Well, thank you very much, Viridian. That does mean a lot to me. I really enjoy doing so. I want to do it some justice, some honor. You know, so yeah, I thank you. That means a lot. I do try to do a lot of accents here and there, and I always have, but hopefully I will be able to keep landing that one.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love it, and I love how just everybody instantly knows who's in character, who's out of character. It's great. I do think it helps the viewer too, honestly. So there's no confusion about when you're speaking IC and OOC. Ooh, okay. Well, believe it or not, we're already past the 90-minute mark. So, and time flies. Justin, I very much look forward to having you again when we're deeper into the campaign and more of it is aired, and you can give your thoughts on what you think about the material, what you think about the relationships, how the character is developing. Give me one prediction that we can fact check down the road, and we'll see how it ages about Durgan.
One prediction about Durgan?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I suspect that he is going to really make the other. I don't know. I think we're going to start seeing him maybe tug people a little bit towards the better side of their natures.
Wow. Okay.
We'll see.
Bold.
We'll see. That's a goal.
That's bold in Curse of Strahd.
It is bold in Curse of Strahd. But that would be. I actually think that would be an amazing thing to see.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With the other characters, especially when we start getting into sort of like, even if you don't know anything at all about Ravenloft and Curse of Strahd and stuff like that, which I really don't. Interestingly enough, I've never really played through this module or anything like that before, so I am trying to keep myself as much sort of in the dark as I can. I think that would be really, I think that'd be a really cool thing to be able to like have these people that normally are just very practical, down to earth. I'm just going to do what I need to do, even if the consequences are dire for others. I think it'd be really interesting to see them start to really weigh the moral decisions and kind of watch them maybe even get a little bit upset that they're like, why do I care about this at all? Why, dang it,
Right.
why would you know? So I don't know. I think that would be a lot of fun to sort of see people sort of have their morality sort of tugged in the good direction.
I'm trying to think of what's going to air before the hiatus over, and I think on one of them we've already had a pretty good, not necessarily like full blown grip level argument, the way that the way Toby can throw bombs in, but like the morality, the little flare ups of different paradigms and different moralities feel very down to earth to me, and like in this tense, tight, dangerous, super dangerous situation, you can see these different characters kind of the border friction of their belief systems is up against each other,
Yeah.
Yay.
Ooh, predictions.
Yep. Zach said, yeah, he did it, that Hell Justin does a better Scottish accent than some professionals I've seen.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
sweet.
Well, thank you, Zach.
Yep.
Brilliant says I can do a mean British accent.
Yep, but that's it.
I'd love to hear it.
Yes.
Anything forward? See, okay, that is something to look forward to. I think even now, Durgan brings out people's good sides. Let's hope so. He has somehow made it into everybody's like journal entry.
Yep.
Usually in some sort of acknowledgement of I don't think he's struck I don't think he's irritated them just yet, but we'll see.
It's going to be. Yes, it's a while down the road, but Morgathy gets a journal entry.
You guys are gonna love Morgathy's journal entry. It was
it was on brand. We'll say
it was fun. I hope that was as much fun to read as it was to hear.
It was fun. It was fun for sure. All right, faraway friends, thank you so much for the gift of your time and your care and holding space for us as we continue this journey. Please spread the word. That there's something worth watching here, and hopefully with Curse of Strahd, there's something for you that you can kind of get people who aren't familiar with Darkport and maybe find the main table a bit daunting to wade into, because we're already 40 plus episodes deep over there. Maybe you can introduce them that way and see what you think. Okay. Zach, gosh, so you're so kind. You really are. Means a lot to us that you've been there from the beginning and just plugging away. Actually, Zach, I'll maybe I shouldn't say this, but just as like a peek behind the curtains, there have been certain decisions that we've made where it's like we always say, but Zach is here, and so like when we're thinking about how to rearrange different structural pieces, it's like we can't forget about him. It's really important. So you were actually, Zach, one of the driving things about beating the drum for syncing up the chat so that you would all so you'd be able to speak with the other children. It's important. Yes, dad damage.
Yeah, I'll keep bringing the dad damage.
Yes, he will. It's psychic damage. It's the wisdom save. Okay. So as you go on about your journey, y'all, take care. Stay curious, and we'll see you here. Curse of Strahd on Tuesday, and then I'm gonna keep doing live stuff next week. We are speaking with our brilliant art director, John Smith, about how he created the visual language of Darkport. And I might even break some news there about an incoming character. I don't know. We'll have to see how bad and undisciplined I'm feeling. But there's one new character coming up that I'm so excited about. I'm really excited about them. So I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Take care of each other too, and we'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.